What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, bringing you the news this afternoon. China's foreign minister says his country will keep retaliating against U.S. tariffs on its goods. Wang Yi made the comments on the sidelines of Beijing's key political meeting known as the Two Sessions. Louise Watt has been following developments from our newsroom here in Taipei. Louise, did Wang's comments tell us anything new about China's foreign policy priorities?
Well, this is a rare press conference by China's foreign ministry. It happens once a year, and it doesn't really give us any chance to see the foreign minister off guard. All the questions are known in advance, but it does give us an opportunity to see what China's foreign policy priorities are. And what's interesting about this year is, let's just think of the context to this speech. We're in a remarkable geopolitical situation. In his first 6 weeks back in power, US President Donald Trump has upended foreign policy from Washington. He's been mending diplomatic ties with Moscow, and he's stunned the US's traditional allies with tariffs on them as well, not just China. So the message Wang Yi really wanted to give today, I feel, at his press conference is that China is a stable global power. And I think that's targeted at Europe. He wants to improve relations with the European Union and also the global South. Beijing has long seen itself as a leader there. Now, of course, everyone was watching to see what he would say about the US, given the tit-for-tat tariffs that are going on. And Wang struck his normal stern tone. He berated Washington. He said it's not how a responsible major country behaves. And he said China will resolutely counter any trade pressure that it faces from the US. But he did also leave open a door. He says there's room for cooperation between the two countries. Now, I think what's notable is that he didn't mention Donald Trump by name, because despite all his tough talk, Beijing does want to leave open a door for negotiations. They hope to see these tariffs rolled back. And we also have to bear in mind that while Donald Trump has been busy with tariffs, with domestic policy, with some foreign policy, Beijing is still waiting to see what he says, not just on tariffs, but waiting for him to articulate a broader strategy on China, for how he plans to treat China during his time in power.
Thanks for that update, Louise. That was Louise Watt reporting from our Taipei newsroom. The Defense Ministry is reporting the largest ever incursion of Chinese balloons around Taiwan. The ministry says it spotted 11 Chinese balloons near the country in the 24 hours before Friday morning. At least 2 of those balloons flew directly over Taiwan's airspace at an altitude of over 6,000 meters. The ministry says it also monitored 5 Chinese aircraft and 6 naval vessels operating around Taiwan in that same period. Emergency measures are being used to help a Taiwanese tour operator arrested in Hong Kong in February. The woman, surnamed Chen, was part of an official Hualien County delegation visiting the city for a travel expo. Taiwan's government body that handles cross-strait affairs says she was arrested in connection with a 25-year-old money laundering case. They're questioning the timing of the arrest and calling for more explanation.
在香港目前已经没有我们陆委会的正式人员，都是香港的雇员啊，所以当然在服务类似的案件或处理类似案件的时候，确实会受到很多限制。
A formal court hearing for Tsun's case is set for April. Japan and the U.S. are wrapping up military drills in Okinawa, not too far from Taiwan. Now, this isn't unusual for these two countries, which have long-standing defense ties. But as the U.S. begins removing some of its Marines from the area, Japan is looking to fill gaps in regional security. Jaime Okan reports.
These U.S. and Japanese Marines are practicing how to call out targets. For almost 3 weeks, islands in Japan's Okinawa prefecture have turned into mini battlefields. with dozens of military aircraft buzzing around the strategic area. Officials here say it's a reflection of tensions in the region.
我が国は戦後最も厳しい安全保障環境に直面し、国際秩序は深刻な挑戦を受けています。ロシアによるウクライナ侵略と同様の事態が発生する可能性は世界中いかなる場所においても否定できません。
These annual exercises are called Iron Fist, and they focus on how to strike targets and coordinate attacks on various islands in the Indo-Pacific. The drills here are also some of the closest to neighboring Taiwan. Just 600 kilometers away sits Kadena Air Base, the closest U.S. military base to Taiwan. And it's a vital hub for U.S. operations in Asia. If a crisis were to erupt in the Taiwan Strait, it would take fighter jets from there around 3 hours to move in. The exercises here are just one part of a renewed effort by Japan to boost its defense, with a potential conflict over Taiwan a big motivator.
Japan has committed to acquiring counter-strike capabilities, including Tomahawk missiles, and expanding its defense budget to 2% of GDP, aimed at strengthening deterrence against a Taiwan contingency.
But a war around Taiwan isn't the only thing on Japan's mind. China's increasingly aggressive moves in Asia and an unpredictable foreign policy from U.S. President Donald Trump is increasing anxiety over Japan's security.
Japan's perennially been worried about two things with regard to the US. One is abandonment, so that the US loses interest, strategic interest in Asia. And the other one is entrapment, so that Japan gets trapped in a US conflict in the region. And particularly, obviously, with the second Trump administration, that worry is being intensified.
The U.S. and Japan do have a mutual defense treaty, but there's growing concern about how active the U.S. will be in Asia's security. That's why these exercises are a chance for Japan to practice taking matters into its own hands. But while China causes a stir in the region, new partnerships between North Korea and Russia are also pushing Japan to stay alert.
Really high level, they are concerned about current Russia-North Korean cooperation of the nuclear development. So I think East Asia country policymakers should pay attention to the more multilateral discussion about arms control in the region.
More joint drills are scheduled for later this month, as Japan looks to take ownership, not just of its own defense, but in its role in helping prevent a regional conflict. Fu Huahong and Jaime Okan in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Hundreds of Chinese nationals are back home after being freed from online scam centers in Myanmar. Several flights carrying a total of 1,500 people are due to leave for China in the next few days. About 7,000 people have been stranded on the Thai-Myanmar border for several weeks now after being rescued from scam operations in Myanmar. Thailand is calling on China and Indonesia to help repatriate their people. European leaders have wrapped up a high-stakes summit aimed at strengthening defense for Europe and Ukraine, just days after a tense showdown at the White House brought U.S. military aid to a standstill. As Chris Gorn reports, EU leaders are showing united support for Ukraine in its fight against Russia's invasion.
A warm European welcome for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as European leaders meet for a special summit on his country's defense. A stark contrast to his disastrous meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump in the White House last week.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
The contentious meeting followed by a pause in crucial U.S. military aid and intelligence support for Ukraine. Ukrainian officials calling it a threat to the global order.
Отже, цього достатньо, щоб зрозуміти, що вже не лише Росія та вісь намагається зруйнувати світовий порядок, а й Сполучені Штати Америки фактично остаточно його руйнують.
Europe is now stepping in to fill the gap with its Rearm Europe plan, with the potential to pour up to $860 billion into new defense spending.
There's a huge pressure on all member states to increase their defense spending. and to have literally a surge in defense. And therefore, the rearm plan with the 5 elements was very much welcomed by all leaders.
French President Emmanuel Macron even suggesting his country's nuclear deterrent could be extended to EU allies.
Je connais bien le président Poutine, donc s'il réagit comme ça, c'est qu'il sait que j'ai dit vrai et que je sais qu'il peut trahir les accords qu'il signe et qu'il l'a déjà fait, que je suis là pour en témoigner.
Russia has pushed back against Europe while praising Donald Trump.
Мы видим, с одной стороны, меняющуюся риторику в сторону реализма со стороны Вашингтона. Конфронтационный курс Евросоюза в отношении России остается неизменным. Русофобия по-прежнему является главным смыслом существования, как мы видим.
While Zelensky on social media says he's now preparing to travel to Saudi Arabia to meet the Crown Prince and U.S. officials, possibly Trump himself, to work towards a peace deal. With global alliances shifting, Ukraine now finds the battle for diplomacy may be as dire as that on the front lines. Justin Wu and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh are scrambling to respond to an announcement that their food rations will soon be halved. The UN's World Food Program says it will cut monthly food vouchers for around 1 million Rohingya refugees starting April 1st. The agency says it's facing severe funding shortfalls after the United States froze aid spending. Since Myanmar's military crackdown in 2016, around 750,000 Rohingya have fled to Bangladesh. Transgender rights activists here in Taiwan are protesting what they say are unconstitutional requirements for transgender people to undergo surgery before they can change their gender marker. Rick Lau reports.
Activists supporting transgender rights here in Taiwan are gathering outside a government building in the capital, Taipei. They're pushing the government to do away with requirements that transgender people wanting to change their gender marker on official documents undergo both psychiatric assessments and, most importantly, undergo gender reassignment surgery. Transgender Taiwanese have already taken this issue to court here, arguing this policy is unconstitutional, and they've won a handful of cases. Now they are saying the ministry in charge of domestic affairs must catch up and change the law.
可是直到现在这么多年了，然后法院从2021年就判决他违宪，一直到现在累积这么久，其实内政部的函释至今没有废除。那到昨天内政部还说我们还在开会中，对，所以其实是完全没有任何的进展。
The push for trans rights here comes as the community faces a backlash elsewhere in the world. In the US under the new presidency of Donald Trump, and with the far right on the rise in Europe. Taiwan is known as one of the most LGBTQ+ friendly places in Asia. This was the first place in the region to legalize same-sex marriage just 5 years ago. But activists here say that trans rights and protections are lagging behind and the government must do something about that. Andy Schwer and Rick Lowett in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taipower is being fined for failing to immediately report a fire at a nuclear power plant. The blaze broke out at the state-owned energy company's facility in southern Taiwan on Thursday morning. It was put out within half an hour with no damage to the plant's reactors. The Pingdong County government says it could fine Taipower up to $3,000 for not reporting the incident as soon as it happened. Taipower says it reported it within 2 hours as required. And thanks for joining us today for What's Up Taiwan. Finally, we take you to the Grand Egyptian Museum, where more than 100,000 artifacts are being prepared for its grand opening in July. I'm Eric Gao, and have a great weekend.